live! Oh my gosh. Hey guys. So sorry it took me a little bit long to figure things out. We're almost starting 30 minutes late. Oh well. Gotta love chaos. Gotta love chaos. Alright, so thank you guys so much for stopping by the stream, first off. Because I don't care. Anyways, okay. So, hold on. I need to do a few things on my end. Something popped up. Okay, we're good. Anyway, sorry. So, thank you guys for stopping by the stream today. Whether you're here to catch it live or catching the replay later, super happy to have you along the journey. These streams are basically going to be my creative lab and kind of substitute the long forms I had been doing. So if I'm being honest, they were very unsatisfactory, shall we say. So with these streams, sometimes I'll be working on writing and showing the behind the scenes of the real life behind the scenes of what it's like to be a writer, basically, and what it totally looks like in real life. Because it's a pet peeve of mine, but I'm kind of sick and tired of people and writers kind of treating it like this, this mysterious thing and kind of protecting it. But I don't see the point of protecting it because it's stupid. At least in my opinion. So, anyway, so that's basically it. Oh, and other times, other times, like today, we're actually going to be talking about one of my topics. Like a rabbit hole, so to speak. Because I have so many ideas on my content calendar and on my topics list that, if I'm being honest, it's insane. Like, I probably have enough content to cover me for 3 years just by myself alone. But you guys feel free to let me know what um what uh what you guys want to watch or want me to talk about or want me to discuss. I'm more than happy to do that. As you can tell, I could talk like 90 miles a minute. It's kind of hard to shut up sometimes, if I'm being honest. Unless I'm writing, then I will give you a heads up. There will be periods of time where I just shut up and write. So, it is what it is. Let's see. So, the vibe is going to be super, super relaxed. Not going to worry too much about it. It's going to be just totally like, hey, if you want to work on something while I'm talking, or if you want to join me in a writing session, then feel free. Go ahead. It's okay. No judgment here. I'm more than happy to like do a back and forth of ideas and stuff like that. Because honestly, that's kind of the point, right? Because why not? like we're here to share ideas. We're here to share the good and the bad. So, why not? Anyways, so if you're here live, which right now there aren't any, but that's okay. So feel free to hang out, guys, seriously, and join in the conversation. Please, I would love that. And if you are watching later, I hope you enjoy the show because it gets chaotic every so often. Anyway, because this is meant to be a super casual, friendly space where, we could just talk and chat, whatever. Um, and, you know, just explore ideas and explore the creative process, basically, because honestly, I'm tired of the gatekeeping. Totally honest. All right. So, without further ado, let's get into today's topic, which is environmental storytelling, which is something I'm super excited about. Because I don't know if you guys noticed, but environmental storytelling is quietly running half the world, while everyone thinks it's just a cool world building trick for writers. Wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong. I can totally tell you right now, it's wrong. Um, because in reality, it's running everything if you think about it. And I'm going to share like a bunch of examples today. So it's running like your grocery store, your favorite app, and whatever coffee shop you work in. And I'm saying that nicely because, yes, we do work in coffee shops. But the thing is nobody calls it world building. They just call it a brand experience or a vibe of of the area. And it's the exact same thing. Identical rules and everything. And people are used to having it, but they don't kind of connect it with it being part of the narrative craft, which is why I believe that a lot of people kind of don't use it in the way that it deserves to be written, which um not this past week but the week before, that's why I kind of did D&D, because when I was doing D&D, I'm not avid into it anymore, but when I was doing it, um it would be my biggest pet peeve, because the game master would be like, all right, we're starting in the tavern, and it's like, but, and then she would be like, anyway, well, so, uh, so like I said, that's shown in the short. So annoying. I kid you not, so annoying. Um, the only thing that is like worse, in my opinion, is video games, which I'm going to be talking about next week. Yeah, hold on. I think next week. Let me look. Um, unless you guys don't want me to talk about that next week, then I'm totally fine with that. Oh no, it's not next week. That's the one I skipped. But anyway, no, that's the one that I feel like has been kind of beaten. Although how I was gonna approach it was gonna beat it to death, in my opinion. Actually, now that I think about it, which is fine, it is what it is. Anyway, so no, the next one is actually going to be kind of like tidying things up, because it's at the end of the first quarter of the year and I base my themes accordingly. Anyway, sorry, you guys don't need to know that. Oh, I'm sorry. Allergies, hate them. So, so where was I at? Oh, yeah. So, so back to the topic at hand. Okay. So, so uh, I don't think people really realize just how much it's ingrained in our culture. because environmental storytelling runs on memory first. Oh no, that didn't make sense. Let me explain better. So, the places and companies people get weirdly loyal to are the ones that plug into some emotional archive in their head. Depending on where you live, depending on what you interact with on the daily, these things are just there. They stare at us every day. And I think, actually, some examples of this would be like Coca Cola, where they don't just sell soda, they sell the feeling of being 9 years old at a family barbecue. Or Nintendo, where they do it every time they re release something from their archives. And then Legos does this by appealing to the inner child of everybody. Because think about it. You hear about like collectors of each of these and you're just like, why? It's because they tell a story. Or at least they sell a story. Um, because none of them sell it directly. They use emotional environments to constantly trigger the sales. Because it's the colors, the sounds, the design, even the language that they use. It triggers. Oh, sorry. It triggers stuff in our heads that we're not expecting. Um, and so, sorry. Let me know if the music is too loud for you guys. Um, anyways, so it's like, where was I at? Oh yeah. So it's like same thing happens when we want to step back into our childhood. Because if you think about it as well, it also happens in diners and in other physical spaces. Places that look and feel like they're stuck back in 1978. Like, or like dusty record stores, indie bookstores with creaky floors that are just overwhelmed with books. See, people don't go there because it's efficient and it's organized and it's perfect. They go there because the nostalgia. Um, and because the place reminds them of who they used to be at that time. The discerning engine, like I've mentioned in my previous videos, we're going to be talking about different. Sorry, about we're basically going to be applying the different engines to the environmental storytelling stuff. So anyway, back to topic. so so the discerning engine shows up in app design more than people realize because anyway, sorry. You know what? Yeah, we're good on that. I'm not doing that. I thought I could get away with music. Sorry, guys. Um. Anyway, the discerning ad. Blah, 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 blah. Covered that. Not yet. Okay. So it shows up in app design more than people realize with this discerning engine. Because a lot of apps, if you notice, they quietly shape your behavior through what they reward or what they hide. You open something like Fitbit or Noom, and suddenly there are streaks, achievements, locked lessons, weird little guilt mechanics if you skip a day. And that's environmental storytelling because your progress becomes part of the world. The same ideas show up in the real world too. Like with gyms that unlock new areas after you hit certain milestones. Restaurants with secret menus, when that was a thing. private clubs that have access, highly specific access. And that becomes part of its story as well. Which honestly, I mean, we've all heard those stories, and we all know that one of the ways that is talked about in writing, or when you want to kind of set people apart in writing, that's what you do, is you kind of create a level up, so to speak, that the characters have to go through or already have access to, this like special place, which it totally depends on what you're talking about, what you're writing, and what you're doing, but the same idea still stands. In the reactive environments for it are where things start feeling almost alive. Like, good architecture and good product design both do this. I bet you anything, if you walk into an Apple store, you'll notice that everything is staged so you feel like the main character in your own tech commercial. Seriously. The lighting, the tables, the spacing, the way employees approach you, even. It's all reactive theater, if you think about it. Because some restaurants also do this as well. Because they change lighting as the night goes on. It's the small little things that do this. Because the environment shifts based on how people inside behave. Same with smartphones and smart homes that learn your habits, literally. And and if I'm being honest, like, this is one of the most underused one of them. There's several, I'm aware. Anyway, it's one of the most underused things that everybody uses when they're writing, or when they're trying to create a design, or when they're just creating in general. They just don't use it because they don't seem to understand that static environments are forgettable. But environments that respond or that bring back something feel alive. And things that feel alive create that attachment that they want, the creators want. So, speaking of creators, um, if they're like building brands or projects, the main question should never be, what's my message? It should be, what emotional memory am I trying to create or tie this to? Because people remember feelings tied to places way longer than they remember facts or copywriting. See, Disneyland didn't become iconic because of the rides alone. It built an entire nostalgia machine where every street corner reinforces the same emotional tone. And coffee break. Mm, love coffee. So, the uncomfortable truth, though, is that most creative projects ignore environments completely. See, writers obsess over the plot or over characters. Businesses obsess over marketing copies. Well, the actual experience people move through, like the website, the store layout, the vibe of the community, it's telling a completely different story. When those two stories don't match, the environment always wins. And so it makes you wonder how you can apply this. And so here are 3 questions to help you. If you're building a brand or marketing or content creation in general, you need to think about what core emotional memory you want to create or emulate and what specific sensory detail delivers it. Because if you're designing a space, you need to ask yourself, what behavior does this environment reward and what does it punish? If you're if you're creating an experience of any kind in any faction in any realm, how does that environment respond? Oh, sorry. To, or how does it reward and what does it punish? And if you're creating an experience, you need to ask, how does the environment respond to the person who's experiencing it? See, these three questions work for a fantasy novel, a product launch, and a storefront on even ground. That's the whole point. See, the gap between knowing this and doing it, though, seriously. Because if you think about it, most people just learn this, nod, and design something completely neutral and hope and wish for the best. But neutral feels safe. It's invisible and it's boring. If we're being honest, come on. Because the Apple store could have just been a normal electronics store with, like, you know, everything like you would see at a Radio Shack or something like that. But it's not. Because somebody made a call that felt risky. The space and story people remembered was built because somebody committed to an answer on all three of those questions instead of playing it safe. Because that's never a good thing, as we all know. And the reason theme parks are the most studied example of environmental storytelling, and I cannot tell you enough how many times I as I was researching did environmental storytelling, theme parks kept popping up. And don't get me wrong, I totally get why. It makes total sense. But at the same time, if you think about it, here, let me move. If you think about it, it 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 kind of it helps with the whole like function, because if you noticed, and this is true, I live nearby, but they have a design where if you walk in a certain area, you smell a certain smell. And it's called, I could be wrong, it's called a weenie theory, where, oh no, that's not the right one, where it's like a sense theory, where you can go and, like, say for example, you're walking down Main Street, you literally smell like what you would expect a Main Street to smell. I can't really describe it well, because it's one of those things, like, you just walk down and you're just like, okay. You smell vendors, you smell food, you smell pretty much what they want you to smell in the first place, which I gotta give them credit. It's pretty freaking amazing, if I'm being honest. Um, Absolutely love it. So, so they actually also, based on my research, they actually have a patent, patented design called a weenie theory, where there's always something visually pulling you through each area, which is amazing. Because if you think about it, Walt Disney, brilliant mastermind that he is and was, he basically wrote a world building textbook, and nobody filed an underworld building until lately. And it's like, he really was ahead of his time sometimes, I think, at least. I could be wrong. Um, but, yeah, he was definitely ahead of his time. And then horror games. Oh my gosh, the horror games. As you know, I talked about, Alien and how I absolutely loved that one. Um, oh, sorry, I'm trying to remember what video it was from. Um, excuse me while I look for it. Let's see. Oh, yes, that one. Where I talk about how it's the perfect example of world building because it doesn't tell you everything you need to know at all. Like, nothing. Like, you don't know anything. Oh, I love that series. I haven't watched it yet. Um, because I've been a little busy. But honestly, like, I absolutely love it. Like, I love the fact that, that the alien learns your behavior in the game Alien Isolation and in other games. And in the movie, it it, it has a sole focus that is so fascinating if you think about it because the corporation that created it was like, we don't give a shit about anybody. So let's create a world-ending machine and let it go have fun. That's basically what it did. And you know, it is what it is. I I absolutely, it's just so amazing because anyway, sorry, we're talking about the game, not not the movies. So in the game, the environment adapts to the player because players have reported genuine fear not because of jump scares, but because the space felt sentient. And it's not a game mechanic. And even though it does seem like the perfect game mechanic, you actually see it everywhere, like I've said. Um, because it's narrative craft applied to AI behavior. And the perfect example of how the environment adapts to you, at least in my experience, is the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo. Because honestly, like, for example, so I used to live in Cheyenne Mountain, or near the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo, and I would go constantly, and they'd have like this winding path through the whole thing, and then they'd have these sections. But the beautiful thing is they would have these sections based on different areas of the world, and they would have like a transition section where it would like gradually introduce you to the next animal. And I I honestly loved it. The one pictured is the African exhibit, that has the obviously the elephant and the rhino. Um and I really loved it. Hated walking over that plank, by the way. Over this. I really hated walking over it. I'm not gonna lie. It sucked so bad. but the thing is I did appreciate like the whole walking through it because it did kind of transport you, not physically, of course, obviously, but it did transport you to different places because they used not only the path and the gates and the different animals, environments to transport you from place to place. But they also used sounds. Like they would use um like they would use drums for African. They would use wind for, or like a snowy blizzard for like the colder areas. They would use um bird songs for, places in the area because they also had that section too. Um but I really loved it because when you got there you were immersed. Not 100% because there was people there too. But you were like immersed in the environment that these creatures roamed every day. And it was really amazing and I absolutely loved it. And so what was my next point? Anyway, so this leads into my next example, which is perfect. Is IKEA. Oh my gosh, IKEA. I could talk about IKEA all day long. So, my family loved to build things, and IKEA was kind of like the go-to store to buy everything and get everything. But it wasn't until like later in my teens, when I had gone there often enough, that I really realized that IKEA is basically a masterclass in environmental storytelling. Because the moment you walk in, you're not in a store. Oh, excuse me. Each section of the area, each showroom is kind of staged like a small apartment or a lifestyle scenario. Um, like a studio apartment. Oh, excuse me. A office setup. Then you have your like cozy family living rooms. And it was perfect because instead of showing you the product on shelves like you expect from a normal store, IKEA shows you what your life could look like if you bought into the story that it was selling. And the path through the store, the path was intentional. I mean, think about it. You don't wander randomly. You follow the winding path that leads you through scene after scene, like chapters in a story. And by the time you reach the warehouse section, you've already emotionally experienced the ideal home scenario and narrative. Because the products at the end feel less like purchases and more like tools you use or can use to create the story you just walked through. And then, I don't have one for this one. So look at the pretty, pretty that. Um, or the bird. I'll switch back to the bird. Anyways, um, so there. So, like, the next one is, and I've only been once or twice to Vegas, so it may be different now. Last time I visited was like 2000s, like in the 2000s. And I'm talking 2000 to 2010. Anyway, so, when we would go there, I'd noticed that the Vegas hotels were like environmental storing hyper fixated. Like, seriously. Because instead of being just hotels on the strip, they were each immersive worlds. Because you'd walk into the Venetian and suddenly you're in a romanticized version of Venice. With the canals, the ceilings, the street performers, the gondolas. Everything from the architecture, the lighting, the music, the layout reinforced the illusion. And it was the same across almost every single one of the casinos on the strip. And what's fascinating, that I found fascinating, was that this storytelling changes how people behave. Because visitors don't just check in and sleep like you would expect at a hotel. No, they'd explore, they took photos, they wandered around and participated in the fantasy. The environment turned the hotel in an experience rather than just a random accommodation. And honestly, I think it's the perfect example of how environmental storytelling encourages emotional participation because the people suspend disbelief and play along with the narrative that's being represented in each hotel. I promise I can talk today, guys. Um, and then my ultimate favorite, which I was so happy that I get to include this on the list, but museums. Oh my god, I could just, oh, I love museums because they are the perfect storytelling environment study. Seriously, because the good museums, they get like the different artifacts and all that stuff, but they guide visitors through carefully structured narrative rather than just simply putting the objects on display, which is boring. But it's like they create stories with the layout, the order, the lighting of the exhibits, everything. And it's cool because they actually allow you to see the start of a culture, the origins of it, and then you move through the major historical events and eventually end up with modern developments or when the last time it was used or or to the end of that certain civilization. And I just the thing that I appreciate the most about it is just how it spotlights certain artifacts despite everything being, you know, lit. It's like they spotlight them in these quiet, darker rooms that you have to navigate to. And it creates a sense of reflection, if I'm being honest. Whereas the large open galleries create this sense of awe and wonder. And the really, wow, I'm such a writer. Anyway, so the important thing is that it it the visitor, the person going through it, isn't just looking at history. They're walking through a curated story of it. Now, I know you guys are gonna say, yes, there's good things and there's bad things, but that's to the side, okay? We're not talking about that. We're talking about the story, okay? The way that you can implement it in your own stories or at least like see how the stories intertwine in your own life. Um, which kind of leads me into a good topic as well. But coffee break first. Anyways, so when I was a kid, um, my parents took me to a cafe, like Rainforest Cafe in Disneyland, but it wasn't Rainforest Cafe. Anyway, so in this, they literally got into the storytelling like Rainforest Cafe, where they had created a miniature world with artificial trees, animal sounds, simulated storms, um, to kind of create this ambiance as because it was also jungle themed, but it's like rain. It wasn't rainforest. What was it? Where was it? It was I actually don't remember anymore. Anyway, it's fine. But like the Rainforest Cafe, the goal was to make the dining experience feel like you were stepping into an adventure. which I loved. When I was a kid, I hated it because it was scary, but when I went again as an older adult, I absolutely loved it. Like it was pretty awesome. Especially to see like there. Especially to see how different people interacted with the environment, not just myself, but other people as well. I absolutely loved it. Um, I'm I, I wish I could remember the name of it. It wasn't Rainforest Cafe though, but I did go there. I did go there. So, that one was really cool. Loved that one. Um, but it was an obscure one that I'm sure didn't really pan out that well because it was well, anyway. But anyway, so what was interesting about that was that even the people knew it was artificial and fake and and all that stuff, they still responded to it emotionally. Because I remember there was all the adults were like taking pictures of their kids or the kids were like interacting with everything. And it was a perfect example, like Rainforest Cafe, that the environment became the main attraction instead of the food itself, because the food was great from what I can remember. But it's like it just shows how perfectly powerful atmosphere can be when shaping memory and experience. Um, Kind of like McDonald's. I don't know if everybody remembers this, but they used to have that little like play section. Absolutely loved it when I was a kid. And and they used to be like bright and yellow and red and just these happy little places and oh, play place, that's what it was called. Um and McDonald's was like well known for that, and it was part of their brand. And and they had the kids meal and all that other fun stuff. And it was beautiful and wonderful, and I absolutely loved it. And then they adapted to current times that well, hmm, yeah. I mean, if you think about it, compared to back then, nowadays McDonald's is like your casual cafe. I cannot tell you how many times I've passed by a few that I'm like, why can't you be like you were? With the fun colors, the plays, the big arches. You used to be fun, and now you're just the emo version. What happened? At least it could be me. I could be. Could just be me, but I am not a fan of this emo version of McDonald's. But like it's just it's just really sad because the shift in general, I think okay, so before McDonald's was like a total kids place, completely kids. So now it's like now they're trying to be to adults, which is boring. I'm sorry. I but but it's just like stop trying to appeal to adults. You are created like Disney to appeal to the inner child. The inner child does not want bland shit. Say it out loud. I'm not gonna, never say it. Anyway, um, but I have noticed that, and it's like, it's really sad because it shows that that as a brand identity changes, the physical environment changes to match the new narrative. And sometimes it's not the best thing in the world. We could call it their failure of listening to their audience. Quite like another big brand that we know. Not gonna say anything about that. Um, but and it's not just them though. I think the interesting thing is that there are a lot of brands out there that aren't as big, but they do the same thing where they try to use the environmental storytelling, but they pick the wrong memory. Because, to be honest, nothing ages worse than a brand that tries to evoke nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. And for a moment that wasn't really as universal as they think. Or worse, one that people want to forget and never remember. For example, and I have a few of these to go through. So tell me which ones you guys think should go on this list, because I've only kept a few. But anyway, so one of the classic cases is Pepsi and Pepsi Crystal Revival. Okay, so wind back in time to the early 1900s. So Crystal Pepsi was originally launched, and it was this weird clear cola thing. And I mean, it wasn't too terrible to taste, to be honest. I did try it. Because the idea was because they were trying to be in with the cool crowd because clear drinks were pure and modern and awesome. Well, I mean, they weren't wrong because at the time, like the product disappeared super fast because people found it weird. Like Coca-Cola that looks like water, it really confused people's expectations, which I totally get. You know, they were huge. Then, then they did something stupid. They tried bringing it back for nostalgia's sake. The only problem is that nobody had fond memories of Crystal Pepsi. I mean, I didn't really like. Yeah, I also wasn't too much a fan of it. I mean, it was okay, but I don't understand why they brought it back. Um, because it wasn't about nostalgia. It was more about a cultural curiosity for the time that it was first taken out. So Pepsi, instead of getting, oh, I missed this reaction, they probably were disappointed and shocked when they received the response of, oh, that weird drink again? Okay. Um, why is it back? Because honestly, like, yeah. Why did it come back? Why? Because that that although the being the perfect example of nostalgia marketing, it more tried to recreate the event instead of forgetting the emotional memory attached to it. Another one, and this one was super creepy when I was a kid. Anybody remember that like really creepy statue in Burger King that was the Burger King mascot? Oh my god. Oh, so scary. He was creepy, not gonna lie. Super creepy. Um because they were trying to they had him in a bunch back in the 2000s, and it was just this like giant plastic thing with like a creepy smile. That's all I remember about it. Anyway, and it would appear silently in the commercials or in the stores or basically like wherever. And It was supposed to be a playful reminder of the brand's older mascot. But the problem is, and I was not alone in this, I'm so happy to find out. But everybody found it unsettling, like weird, like totally a meme for nightmare fuel. Like, seriously. Thank God Burger King was like, okay, we're gonna retire that because the nostalgia they tried to tap into didn't land with younger audiences. See, the storytelling intention was classic brand heritage, and the audience's experience was more of like, oh, why is this creepy guy staring at me? What is he gonna do? Get away from him, please. Um, Another one that was nostalgia from when I was a kid, and I still have, well, I won't say nightmares, but I still absent-mindedly fondly remember this guy. Um Anybody? Anybody remember this guy? Anybody? Anybody remember this guy? Huh? Huh? Anybody? Anybody? Oh God. Clippy. Oh, the pain of Clippy. Oh my God. Anyway, so so way back in the day, Clippy used to be like the go-to thing that was like this little AI, well, like AI, but it's not really AI. It was more of an assistant for Microsoft Office, which, I use Microsoft Office. I'm glad that they got rid of it because that thing was creepy. But the thing is, is Clippy was meant to be like a super helpful little AI assistant way back in the day. But most people, myself included, remember him as annoying. We tried so hard to get him to get out of the way so we could work on what we needed to work on. So, thankfully, thankfully, because this is another thing that was just like, oh my God, guys, like, it was insane. Oh, sorry, I have an itchy nose. Ugh. Anyway, because, and thank goodness they learned their lesson and got rid of him, because now when they reference him today, it's usually done ironically because they know that it's a shared trauma rather than happy. Rather than shared happiness, it's shared trauma, which is so true. Oh my gosh. Like, you can ask anybody in their like 30s to 40s. Clippy was, well, we'll just say interesting. Not a fan of him. But it's a really, I'm very glad they didn't bring him back. And that they only reference him because then that way they acknowledge the memory instead of pretending it was beloved and threatening us again. Which I'm not gonna lie, he did do that a few times, but so alright. So that's it for today. The thing that's still sitting with me is that most people experience environmental storytelling every single day and never realize that they're inside a designed narrative. The coffee shop that makes you feel like a regular on your third visit didn't do that by accident. Somebody chose the music tempo, the lighting warmth, the distance between tables. You felt it and called it a vibe, but in reality, it's craft. And once you see that, you can't stop seeing that, which is either a gift or a curse, depending on your tolerance for noticing things. The real trick of environmental storytelling is realizing the story is happening whether you design it or not. Every space, which this is the Gaylord Palms. I thought that that'd be cool. Anyway, every space, app, or brand, project, literally anything, is already teaching people how to feel inside it. The only real question is whether you're doing that on purpose or just letting the environment make the decision for you. And that's the end of this little deep dive into environmental storytelling. If you want direct feedback or editing help, my Fiverr's linked below. And if you're curious about how I apply this stuff in my own work, my books are also linked. They're short, they're $5, and they exist. This is WriteSparky, and we will see you